Do you need to put fishing line on your bait casting reel? I'm going to show you how. Stick around. Hey folks, Keith here at Chicken Thigh Fishing. Welcome to another episode of Bassin for Beginners. Today we're going to tackle the very basic task of putting fishing line on your bait casting reel. Now when it comes to putting the line from the new spool onto your rod and reel, there are several ways that you can do that. Sometimes it's easier to have another person and you can have them hold the spool of line, for instance with a screwdriver running through it, and they can simply hold it while you reel the line off of it. But more often than not, there's nobody else around and you have to do it by yourself. And there's several different ways you can do that. You can just simply have it on the floor inside of your house or outside and let it run around while you reel the line off it and watch your cat chase it. Or you can get yourself a spooling station that you can attach to your workbench in your work area, wherever you have that. Or you could do like I did and just build a makeshift spooling station of your own, and that comes in quite handy. I'll show you that. I just took some scrap wood and some bolts I had, and I mounted these little brackets to the wall in my basement, and they fit several different spools of line on them, and so I use that, and that works well for me. You can also take something like a shoe box and get a real long screwdriver, and you can run the screwdriver through the sides of the shoe box and then put the reel inside the shoe box, and that way it's contained and it's just spinning on the screwdriver, and that way it's not rolling all over your house, which can kind of be a pain in the butt if you do it that way. So anyway, whichever way you feel like doing it, God bless you. So the first step is obviously getting your line to your spool. So you get the line from your new spool of line and you go through all of the guides starting at the rod tip, working your way towards the reel. When you do that, you want to be sure to hit all the guides. If you're like me and you're getting old and your eyesight is failing you, you're going to want to do it in a well-lit area so you don't miss a guide. So I've got my line from my spooling station, and I'm going to start at the rod tip. Okay, now that I have the line through all the guides, I'm going to double check to make sure that I actually made it through the hole on each guide, because if you missed a hole, that's going to cause a problem for you and you're going to have to redo it. So it's always worth a couple of minutes just to go over and double check, make sure you hit every guide. Okay. So now that I know I hit every guide, it is time to put the line into the reel and onto the spool. So the first step in doing that is removing the side plate from the reel. In this case, I'm using a mock crush reel from Lew's, and the release lever for the palm side plate in order to access the spool, there is a little switch on the bottom. You simply click that to the open position. You're able to rotate the side plate and remove it. Once you remove the side plate, you're able to remove the spool. Go ahead and put that aside somewhere where it's not going to roll away on you. and then you're ready to put the line on the spool. However, before we do that, I just want to show you something that might stump you if you're new to bait casting reels and new to bass fishing. Now, you saw how easy it was for me to remove the side plate in order to access the spool on this reel. But you should be aware that different makes and models and manufacturers of different reels have different mechanisms by which you release that side plate. And there's several different types. So I thought I would take some of the reels that I own that have different ways to remove that side plate and show you a few examples of that. So here we have a custom black reel from Lew's, and you'll notice there is no lever on the side plate in order to release the side plate here. What this reel has is a spring-loaded pin here, and using your thumb or a fingernail, you go ahead and release the spring tension on that, and what that does is it allows you to rotate this one, and this one rotates up, and you remove the side plate and you can access the spool. Here we have a Soleus reel from Favorite Fishing, and what this has is it has a release lever underneath, but it's a different type, and it's up front instead of in the back, and it's kind of a rocker type switch. And what you do there is you just take the wider end of it and you rock it, and you're able to turn and release and remove the spools and the side plate. Here I have an Apex Elite reel from Ardent, and this has a different mechanism. You'll see that there are no levers here. What this has is a screw on the opposite side, and it's a spring-loaded screw, and so you either use a flathead screwdriver, or if it's not too tight, you can just use your hand and loosen it. It releases the spring tension. You can turn it and remove it. Still another example here is the Promax reel from Abu Garcia, and the mechanism by which you release the palm side plate on this reel is a spring-loaded bar that is inside the housing of the reel here, and you'll see that it has little ridges on it that you can put a thumbnail or a fingernail on and release the pressure, and once you do that you can turn it and remove it and access the spool. So there you have that. Click it back in place. Now, those certainly aren't all the different types of release mechanisms there are for palm side plates, but I just wanted you to be aware that that is the case when you're putting line and you need to, or for any reason, if you need to access your spool and you're new to bait casting reels. There are different mechanisms, and I guarantee you there is one on your reel in order to access the spool. You just got to figure out what it is. It's probably in the manual, but be aware that there are several different types. So now once you have the side plate and the spool removed, you're going to put the line into your spool, and you're going to do that by putting it through the level wind guide on the front of your reel. And I'll bring that up so you can see a close-up of that. Put it right through the hole in the level wind guide, so it's inside your reel, and then you go out the hole where the side plate was. So at this point you have your line coming from the new spool of line through the rod tip and all the guides, through the level wind guide, into the reel, and out the hole where the palm side plate is. And so now what we're going to do is tie the line to the spool itself. So you're going to get yourself a good amount of slack here. And now there is no one way to do this, and there's no right way. There's 100 different ways to put line on spools. You talk to 100 different people, you'll get 100 different answers. No way is the right way. This is the way I do it, and this is the way that works for me. Now I use braid a lot. I use braid vast majority of all my rods and reels. And due to the properties of braid, you have to watch out for line slip. If you put braid on and you do it loosely, you can experience line slip, and that is to say that when you have a new spool of line and you hook into a fish and you go to set that hook on that fish if your line isn't tied properly to the spool, the whole spool of line on your spool will slip, and you'll feel it slip, and that could cost you a big fish because you will be unable to properly set the hook. So when you're using braid, you have to watch out for that, and there's a couple of different ways to avoid that. Some people take electrical tape and they put it around the spool, and that gives the braid something to bite into. Other people use what's called a backing. They put a different kind of line on first that doesn't slip, and then they tie their braid to the backing. What I do is I use a kind of knot that doesn't require me to do that, because this type of knot prevents line slip. So I'm going to show you that knot. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our spool ready, and we're going to put a bend in our line. So it's got a big loop like this, and we're going to tie a uni knot. And all we do to do that is I'm going to take the tag end of the line that's hanging over here, and I am going to wrap it 6 times around this double line here, the 2 lines of the loop that I just created. So I'm going to take it over here, and I am going to wrap it around the loop I created 6 times. I'll try to get this so you can see it. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to grab that tag end, and I am going to pull that down on itself so it creates the uni knot. I'm not going to pull it super tight. I'm just going to pull it snug. So now right there, I have a uni knot, and I still have that loop that I made. Now we're going to take that loop, and we're going to put that over our spool, like so. So I have a top line of the loop, and I have a bottom line of the loop. I'm going to take the top line, and I am going to wrap it around twice. Now I'm going to take the bottom line of that loop, and I'm going to wrap it around the opposite direction twice. So now I still have my loop. I just wrapped it around the spool a couple of different times. You can see it there. So keeping it taut on that loop, I have it tied around twice. Now I have that uni knot that we made right there. And we're going to bring the uni knot down to the spool. And we just kind of do that by rocking the spool and bringing it down. And then once it's down there, you kind of cinch it down tight. And of course you have your tag end. And you cut the tag end off. Now that the tag end is cut off, your spool is tied. So now I'm going to pull up my slack, and we are going to put the spool into the reel. You put the shaft into the hole, put the spool in, replace your palm side plate, close the lever, make sure it's on there snug. Now your line is through the level wind guide, tied to your spool, and your spool is back in, and the palm side plate is back on, and now we can put line on the spool. So how I'm going to do that is simply by reeling, and I'm going to hold it up here, so there's a little bit of tension between my thumb and forefinger, and I am going to reel. And so now I have it coming off my spool across the room. You can hear it spooling. Okay, so when you're finished spooling, that's what it'll look like. And you want to leave about 1/16 of an inch or so up here to the lip of your spool, because you don't want to overfill your spool. If you do overfill your spool, you'll feel there's too much line and it actually touches here and it rubs. So there you have it, a brand new spool of braided fishing line on your bait casting reel. And it works the same with fluorocarbon or monofilament. I hope this video was a help to you. Hit that like button, folks. Hit that subscribe button. And as always, thanks for being a part of Chicken Thigh Fishing. We'll see you out on the water. Stay fishing, my friends.